Chapter 11. Relationship to inmate. Nobody calls you. That is the first thing. There is no system that notifies the woman. He was taken out of my apartment at 6 in the morning on a Wednesday, and by 9 that night I had learned that a person can vanish into a building 4 miles from your house, and no one on earth is obligated to tell you a single thing about it. I went to 120 Skirmahorn Street on Thursday because Camille's neighbor's brother had been through it and said that's where you go. Criminal court arraignment happens within about 24 hours of an arrest. It is not a trial. It is 4 minutes long. They read the charge, the defendant says 2 words, and a judge decides one question. What, if anything, has to happen to make sure this person comes back to court? I did not know any of that. I sat on a bench in a hallway from 9 in the morning until almost 4 in the afternoon with a printout of a docket number I could not read, going into the wrong rooms. There was a woman on that bench. 60s church coat, thermos, a paperback she wasn't reading. She had the specific patience of somebody who has done this many times. Around 1 o'clock, she looked over at my stomach mostly and asked who I was there for. I said, and stopped. I want you to sit with that. I could not finish the sentence. 21 years old, 24 weeks pregnant, and there was no word. Boyfriend was a lie by omission. Partner sounded like a law firm. The father of my child was a phrase, not a relationship. My daughter's father, I said finally. She said, and moved her thermos so I could sit closer. It was that woman, not a lawyer, not an officer, not a sign on a wall who explained it to me. She'd been coming to that building on and off for 9 years for a son. She asked what they'd told me, and I said somebody at a window had said he was remanded, and I'd said thank you because I thought it was a room. Remanded means no bail, she said. Means he stays in until it's over. Until the trial? Until it's over, she said again, kindly, and let me work out the difference myself. He had been arraigned Wednesday afternoon. I missed it by 19 hours. Deborah Ruiz Yang did not do comfort. Her office was on Court Street, up 2 flights with a view of a parking structure, and she talked to me the way a surgeon talks to a family, fast, complete, without stopping to see how it landed. Bail in this state is not about whether he's dangerous, she said. People get that wrong constantly. The question a judge answers is return to court. Will he come back? That's it. So everything I use is roots, the child, the businesses, the property, 29 years in the same 6 blocks. She flipped a page. Everything they use is reach, money nobody can trace, a homicide count, people who do things for him without being asked. So the exact things that make him able to take care of me are the things that keep him in. Yes, welcome. The indictment came down before Christmas. A grand jury, 23 people, no defense lawyer present, a much lower bar than a trial voted a true bill on murder in the second. That moved him into Supreme Court and gave Ruiz Yang one real shot at a bail application in front of a judge who would actually hear argument. I registered for spring semester on the 29th of December in a computer lab on the 2nd floor of Hollis between 2 students arguing about a professor. Senior seminar. Thesis credits. Statistics for the Social Sciences Part 2. 12 credits due in March, husband's bail hearing in January. I clicked submit and went and sat in my car. The 11th of January, 2010. 320 J Street, Part 22. Ruiz Yang told me to bring his good suit. I ironed it on the floor of the front room because the board had been broken since the search. It was too big on him. 5 weeks. 5 weeks, and the suit that had fit that man in a Hollis Hall reading room in May hung off his shoulders. He came out through a side door with a court officer's hand on his elbow, and he was looking for me before he was all the way through it. He found me. He didn't smile. He lifted 2 fingers off his thigh, the same 2 fingers off the steering wheel on East 21st in the dark, and an officer said something to him and he faced front. The whole thing took 11 minutes. They read the indictment. He said not guilty, in a voice I had never heard him use, flat and loud enough for the record. Then Ruiz Siang made her application and she was extraordinary, the laundromat, the shop, the tax filings, 29 years. At the same addresses, an elderly aunt in Canarsie, a daughter due in March. She said my name in a courtroom. Naima Carter, a senior at Verrazano College, expecting his child in March. I felt every head in that room move about 4 degrees. Then Assistant District Attorney Grace Whitaker stood up, and she was worse than extraordinary. She briefed, the people opposed. The charge was an A1 felony. The defendant had access to unreported cash of undetermined amount and family in 2 other states, and the people's concern about return to court was, in her words, structural rather than speculative. And then one more thing, quietly, almost as an aside. The people would also note for the court that the individual charged in this indictment is alleged to have arranged the disappearance of a witness. I had a photocopy of a newspaper article in the glove compartment of my car in the lot on Adams Street, 40 feet from where I was sitting. Every person in that courtroom heard witness and disappearance in the same sentence. The judge looked at the file for about 9 seconds. Defendant is remanded. 2 words. 11 minutes total. They took him back through the side door, and he turned his head once, and I stood up too fast and had to put a hand on the bench in front of me. My mother was in the last row. She hadn't told me she was coming. She had worked a double Sunday to be free on Monday, and she stood at the back of Part 22 in her good coat, and when I came up the aisle, she took my arm and said nothing at all. She walked me down 4 flights because I didn't want the elevator. On the plaza outside, Ruiz Yang handed me a form. Visitor application, Rikers Island. Name, address, date of birth, government ID, and a line about 1/3 of the way down. Relationship to inmate. I stood on J Street with a pen in my hand for a long time, and then I wrote friend because there was nothing else on this earth that was true. Chapter 12. 8 mechanisms. It takes 14 hours to see somebody for 38 minutes. I left East 21st Street at 6:10 in the morning on the 26th of January. Bus, train, then the Q100 out of Queens Plaza, a city bus like any other except that everyone on it is going to the same place and nobody is talking about it. Almost all women. That's the part I wasn't ready for. Women and children who had clearly done this before and knew to bring something to do, and 2 men in their 60s and a girl younger than me asleep against the window with her mouth open. Rikers is not far. That's the obscene part. You can see Manhattan from the bridge. You do not go straight in. You go to a building on Hazen Street, you get on a line, you show identification, they look you up. Then you put every single thing you own into a lockerphone keys, wallet, and the locker takes a coin you have to have brought with you, and nobody tells you that in advance. The woman behind me lent me a quarter. I never saw her again. Then there's the dress code, and the dress code is where I nearly lost the whole day. You cannot wear anything resembling what the officers wear. No dark blue, no khaki, no hoods, no drawstring. I had come in a navy sweater because it was the only thing that still went around me in the 6th month, and a woman at the desk looked at it and shook her head and said, not unkindly, "That's not going in." "This is what fits me." "Baby, I hear you." She turned around, got a t-shirt out of a plastic bin under the counter. The kind they keep for exactly this, 3 sizes too big, washed to nothing, and said, "Bathrooms on the left." I rode home that night in a stranger's t-shirt under my coat, and I have never been so grateful for an article of clothing in my life. Another bus across, another line, a search. Then you wait, and the waiting is the real content of the day. Plastic chairs bolted in rows, a television bolted up in a corner playing daytime programming with the sound off 2 hours or 3 or 5. Names called in an order that has no order. The room organizes itself. Somebody's aunt hands out mints. A woman with 3 kids gets 2 of them adopted for an hour by strangers. A first-timer gets told what she's allowed to bring in and what to do if she cries. You get a warning, they said, and the second time they end the visit. So hold it, baby, hold it till the bus. They gave me the chair by the wall because of my stomach. A woman named Denise gave me half a sandwich at 11 and told me to eat it because I'd feel it later. And she was right. They called me at 1:10. He was already at the table. I had prepared for the greens and the plastic chairs and the officers along the wall, and none of that is what hit me. He looked smaller. Not thinner though he was. Smaller. He sat with his hands flat on the table because that's the rule, and the stillness that used to make an entire laundromat arrange itself around him was gone. No, not gone. Contained. Folded up and put somewhere. He was a man being still because a man in a uniform 6 feet away could decide otherwise. Hey. 38 minutes. Neither of us cried. We kept our faces completely level the whole time, and we had never once had to do that with each other before. We did not talk about the case. He told me before I could get near it. Everything in here gets heard. Phones are recorded. This room is watched. Mail gets read before you get it. You understand what I'm telling you? Yes. So we talk about boiler. And we did. For 38 minutes, that man asked me about the boiler, the alignment on the silver car, whether Dr. Adeyemi had moved my appointments to Thursdays, what Camille's boys weighed now, and whether I had registered for 12 credits or dropped to 9. It sounds like nothing. It was the most tenderness I have ever received in my life. He had 2,000 things he could not say, and he spent every minute of his 38 on the state of my hot water. At the end, he asked, and an officer nodded, and he put one hand flat on my stomach for about 4 seconds. She kicked. Of course she did. She had been quiet for 6 hours on a bus, and she kicked the second that man's hand landed on, and he made a sound I had never heard him make. That's a girl, he said. You have been saying that since September. And I've been right since September. At the door, don't come every week. What? Twice a month. That's plenty. He didn't look at me. It costs, and it's a long day on you. I thought he meant the money and the bus. Some of it was the money and the bus, but every visit is a record. My name, my address, my identification, my signature, the date, the time in, and the time out. Written in a book by the state of New York every single time for as long as anyone should care to look. I was in the lab at 9 the next morning because I had a shift and because I did not know what else to do with my hands. Dr. Feld came out of her office at 20 past, put a coffee down on my desk that she had not been asked for, and sat on the edge of the table. Carter, what is happening to you? Nothing's. You have missed 4 shifts since December. You emailed me at 6 in the morning from a hospital. You slept in that chair on Tuesday, and yesterday you weren't in the building at all. She folded her arms. So, my father of my daughter has a laundromat on Cypress Avenue, I said, and an auto shop on Farragut. He owns the building the laundromat's in. And Miriam Feld looked at me for a long moment with an expression I could not read at the time and can read perfectly now. I didn't ask you what he owns. I didn't say anything, Carter. She stood up. You are the best student in this department, and you have written me 40 pages on the mechanisms people use to do things they know are wrong while continuing to believe they are good. She picked up her own coffee. You are the only person in this building who could tell me exactly what is happening to you right now. And you are the only person in this building who won't. Then she went back into her office and shut the door, which she never did. The coding manual for her study was due that Friday. 8 mechanisms. Take each one, write the definition, then write an example clear enough that an undergraduate with a highlighter could recognize it in a transcript. I did all 8 in one sitting in a hallway office with a radiator that ran in January. Moral justification. He's not hurting anybody who wasn't already in it. Euphemistic labeling. Business, work, the building on Cyprus, 2 minutes. Advantageous comparison. Terrence disappears for 3 weeks and nobody says a word to Camille about her choices. Displacement of responsibility. He told me to stay in the car. Diffusion of responsibility. Bishop was there. Half of Flatbush knows more than I do. Distorting consequences. 4 paragraphs in a newspaper. Dehumanization. I never even saw his face. Attribution of blame. He walked in there on his own 2 feet. I typed all 8 definitions correctly. Every example I reached for was mine. Then I opened the notebook, the black one, 99 cents, the one he had handed back to me in a laundromat 15 months earlier, and for the first time since December of 2008, I wrote a sentence in it in the first person. I know exactly what he is, and I have known the whole time, and I have been very smart about it. Chapter 13. Collect. A call from Rikers in 2010 cost me between $8 and $14. Not per month, per call. There was a connection charge and then a per minute rate, and the calls cut off at 15 minutes, whether you were finished or not. And if you wanted to keep talking, you called back and paid the connection charge again. It always started the same way. A recorded woman with a pleasant voice saying there was a collect call from an inmate at a New York City correctional facility. Then a gap. Then his voice saying his own name, 3 syllables in a tone I never got used to. Then the recording again telling me the call may be monitored and recorded. Then a beep. Then him. I want to be specific about money because this is the part of loving somebody in jail that nobody makes a movie about. The tin above the stove was gone, seized, counted, receipted on the 9th of December. The lab was paying me $11 an hour, and I was 6 months pregnant and had cut to 2 shifts. That spring, my expenses were rent on East 21st, which was mine alone now, a phone account I put $40 in at the start of every month, and which was empty by the 11th, commissary, because the food in there is what it is, and because all man with money on his books is a man nobody bothers, a bus, 2 trains, and another bus twice a month. The quarters for the lockers, which I now kept in a film canister in my coat pocket so I would never have to borrow one again, and $460 in course fees, and a graduation application fee of $35, which I paid at a window on the first floor of the administration building behind a girl complaining about parking. By February, I was selling things. Nothing dramatic. A television, a gold bracelet my mother gave me for my 18th birthday, which I told her I had put somewhere safe. That's the arithmetic. He had spent a year and a half making sure I never worried about money, and 8 weeks after they took him out of my apartment, I was pricing a bracelet on Flatbush Avenue. The letters were better than the calls. Mail at Rikers is opened and inspected before it reaches you. And we both knew it. And after the first 2 letters, we stopped pretending otherwise. There was a third person in every conversation we had for 11 months. So we wrote around that person. We wrote in boilers. His handwriting was small and neat and slanted hard to the right, like a man taught properly by somebody and never lost it. He wrote on the line paper they sell in there. He never used my name at the top. He never signed off. The vestibule light. Did she fix it? If she says next week, that means March. Call the number I gave you and say my name and don't say anything else. Eat something at 3 o'clock. You don't, and then you can't sleep, and then you tell me you slept. What is the thesis about? Not the short answer. Write it out and don't make it simple for me to... I got time. I wrote him 11 pages about attachment formation in institutional settings, which is what my thesis was about, and which I did not think about this until much later, is a study of what happens to children who are cared for by people who are not permitted to stay. He never once said a word about that. He asked 3 follow-up questions in the next letter. Good ones. Then, on the 9th of February, a longer one. They took my picture when I came in here. It is a bad picture. My father has a picture of me from when I was 5, and that is the one I think about. Same face. I keep thinking a man can't be 2 things, but I was 5 once and I am this now, and it is the same face, so I don't know what to do with that. You are going to have to explain me to her one day. I am not telling you what to say. I am telling you I know it is going to be your job and not mine, and that is not fair to you. I read that one 4 times on the vestibule stairs with my coat still on. The shoebox was in the closet in the back under a folded blanket. I found it in the 3rd week of February looking for the humidifier. Letters. 200 and something. Same handwriting on all of them. Big and looping and pressed hard into the paper. Same return address in Attica, New York. Some had been opened. Most had not. I asked him on a Thursday call. Burn them. Malachi. I said burn them. You don't need to be reading a man's business. He's her grandfather. $9 a call. He used 11 seconds of it not saying anything. Do what you want, he said. You always do. I opened one. Just one from 1998 when Malachi was 15. Son, received your school picture from your aunt. You got tall. I am going to say the same thing I always say because it is the only thing I know that is worth the stamp. Do not do what I did. Not one part of it. Not the small parts either, because the small parts is how it starts. Take care of your mother. Be better than me. That is all. That is all I have got. Your father, Otis. 22 years of that. Every month. Into a mailbox in a house where nobody answered. I wrote to Otis Sinclair on the 24th of February, 2010, at 11 o'clock at night, 8 months pregnant, at a kitchen table with a bathroom door still leaning in the hallway because I had never gotten anybody to rehang it. I told him my name. I told him I was finishing a degree in psychology in May, and that I wanted him to know that about me. I told him his son was at Rikers Island on a homicide charge and had been remanded. I told him there was a girl coming in the middle of March. And then I wrote, he has never once written you back, and I don't think he is going to. I'm not writing to make up for that. I'm writing because somebody in this family should tell you a true thing on purpose, and you have been the only one doing it for 22 years. I mailed it before I could think about it. He wrote back 9 days later. I'll get to that, because on the 1st of March, there was other mail. A white envelope with a window in it from the office of the District Attorney, Kings County, addressed to Naima F. Carter at East 21st Street. I stood in the vestibule under a light the landlady had finally fixed and held it for a while. I already knew. I had known since the 11th of January, in a courtroom, when a woman in a gray suit said the word witness out loud, and I told myself she meant somebody else. Chapter 14. The People of the State of New York. I called Deborah Ruiz Yang from the vestibule with the envelope still in my hand, and she said 11 words that rearranged my understanding of the previous 3 months. Naima, I'm his lawyer. I am not your lawyer. I've been talking to you because you're my client's family, and it helps my client. That's it. No apology in it at all. Nothing you said to me is protected the way you think it is. You need your own attorney, and you needed one in December. I can't afford my own attorney. Then you say that out loud on the record at the beginning. 350 J Street, the 8th of March, 2010 at 10 in the morning. 37 weeks pregnant in the one pair of shoes that still fit, with a seminar at 4:10 that afternoon I fully intended to attend. I had prepared. God, I had prepared. 2 nights building an architecture of what I would and would not say, which mechanisms I would refuse to use, how I would hold my face. Grace Whitaker walked in with a file box, said good morning, and asked if I wanted water. 40s. Gray suit, sensible shoes, a wedding band, and no other jewelry, and a manner so completely without theater that within 90 seconds, every defense I had built was sitting in the corner of that room, being useless. There was a detective investigator in a chair by the wall who never spoke. You're due when? The 19th. My second was born in March. She set the box down. Do you have a lawyer, Miss Carter? No. I can't afford one. Say that again for me, and then I'm going to tell you some things. She wrote it down. You're entitled to counsel. This is not an interrogation. You're not in custody. You can stand up and leave, and nothing bad happens to you today. I'd rather you heard all that from me than found it out later and decided I tricked you. Then she opened the box. The first thing on the table was a photograph of a young man. School picture maybe, or a church program, a bad backdrop, a face doing what a young man's face does when somebody tells him to look serious. Marcus Still, she said. His mother sits in the second row of my courtroom every appearance. She has not missed one. I made myself look at it. It was the second time that face had entered a room I was in, and the first time had been a 19-year-old saying the name out loud in a seminar on grief. The second thing was a visitor log. Rikers Island, 2 pages my name on every line. Date in, time out. My address, my signature. The third was a spreadsheet. 22 deposits between October and February. 3 branches, none over 1,000. The largest is 800. She turned it toward me. Do you know what that pattern is called? Structuring, she said. It's a federal offense on its own, separate from where the money came from. A person can go to prison for it, having never touched an illegal dollar. I wasn't trying to. I believe you, she said, and the terrible thing is that she meant it. 19 years I've been doing this. You're a senior at a city college with a research prize who got told no by a teller one time and worked out on her own how not to get asked again. That's not a criminal. That's a smart woman picking up bad habits from a man who has good ones for a living. The fourth thing was a photograph of a parking lot. Cypress Avenue, behind the laundromat. Time-stamped grainy, taken from a pole across the way at 10:09 p.m. on the 9th of December, 2008. A Crown Victoria. And in the passenger seat, unmistakably, a shape with its head down over something in its lap. Flashcards. We've had that since March of last year, Whitaker said. It took 4 months to work out who was in that seat, and another 5 to be satisfied you weren't involved. You're not a suspect. You are a witness at present, the only person we have who was there and who was not part of that crew. I didn't see anything. I know, she said. That's not what I need. Then she took me through it in order in the pleasantest voice you ever heard. What time did the car pull in? Who got out? Who arrived after? Who held the door? How long? What came out of that building? And in what order? I did not answer one question. Not one. I sat with both hands on my stomach and said over and over that I would like a lawyer before I said anything, and she wrote it down each time without a flicker of irritation and moved to the next one anyway. Because the questions were the point. She was not trying to get answers that morning. She was showing me she already knew the shape of them, and that all I would be doing at trial was filling in a number. 3 went in behind him. 3 came out. Then she said, "One procedural thing. Has anyone contacted you about this case? Anyone at all? A friend of his, a stranger, a phone call, a letter, anything left for you?" The photocopy was in the glove compartment of a silver car in a garage on Adams Street, 4 blocks away. You should tell somebody in careful ballpoint under 4 paragraphs about a man found in Brooklyn. "No," I said. She looked at me for about 2 seconds longer than the answer required, and then she wrote something down, and I have never known what. That is the only outright lie I told anybody in this entire story. I want it on the record with the rest of it. At the end, she closed the box. "One more thing, and then you can go. This isn't strategy. It's a thing I've watched happen to a lot of women, and I've stopped being able to not say it." "Okay. He told you to stay in the car." That's what you've been holding on to. I could see it when I said the date. That's your one clean fact, and you've been running it like a rosary. She picked up the box. "Miss Carter, he knew what was happening in that building. He knew before he parked, and he brought you with him anyway and left you sitting 40 feet from it with the engine running." "That's not—" "You're going to want to finish that sentence," she said. "Take your time. I've got nowhere to be." I could not finish the sentence. I sat in an office on J Street 8 months pregnant and went through all 8 mechanisms I had personally written the definitions of in order to, and not one of them would hold that fact off me. At the door, she said the last thing almost gently, which is why it took my legs out from under me on the sidewalk 10 minutes later, instead of in the room. "For what it's worth legally, you're nobody to him. No marriage, no lease, no acknowledgement of paternity, nothing on paper anywhere. If he's convicted tomorrow, you have no standing to be told anything." She held the door. "That's not an insult. That's just the file." I made the 410 seminar. I sat in a windowless room on the 3rd floor of Hollis Hall with a legal envelope in my bag, 11 days from my due date, and took 4 pages of notes on separation and reunion behavior. Andre Ellery asked me afterward if I was feeling all right, and I said I was fine. Chapter 15. What a marriage does... I got a lawyer on the 10th of March. Not a real one, a clinic. Brooklyn Law School runs one. A supervising attorney named Ellen Fahey took my subpoena, and 2 law students took notes, and it cost me nothing. And Ellen Fahey was the first person in 4 months who read something on my behalf instead of somebody else's. She was about 60 and had a plant on her windowsill that was clearly dying and that she clearly loved. She told me the truth in 1 sentence. "A subpoena is not a request, Naima. If you're served and you don't come, that's contempt. And contempt is a judge putting a woman in a cell to make a point." 2 days later, Deborah Ruiz Yang called me into the office on Court Street and told me the other truth, which was worse. "He's going to ask you to marry him." "What?" "Sit down." She did not sit. "He raised it with me on Tuesday. I told him what I'm about to tell you, and he didn't like it, and he's going to ask you anyway. So you'll hear it from me first in a room with no recording in it, because I am not letting a 21-year-old walk into this on television logic." "Television logic? Everybody in America thinks a wife can't testify against her husband," she said. "That is not the law in New York, and it is not really the law anywhere." And she laid it out flat, the way she laid everything out. There is a marital privilege in this state. It covers confidential communications made between spouses during the marriage. Things said to each other in private while married. That is the entire territory. It does not cover what a person saw. It does not cover what a person heard through a wall. And it does not reach backward in time and swallow a night in a parking lot 15 months before anybody said any vows. You were in that car in December of 2008. You were not married to him in December of 2008. Even if you marry him tomorrow morning, Grace Whitaker can put you on that stand and ask what time the car pulled in, who got out of it, and how many men came back out of that building, and there is not one thing about a marriage license that stops her. Then why would he? Because he's a man in a cell who's heard the same wrong thing on television that you have. And because when men in cells get frightened, they reach for the biggest thing they can still do from in there. Then she told me the part that frightened me. If either of you ever says on a recorded line, in a letter that gets read to a friend who later needs a favor from the government, that the purpose of this marriage was to stop you testifying, you have handed the people an obstruction argument on a plate. That's not just bad for him. Witness tampering is a crime you can be a participant in. She finally sat down. Do you understand what I'm telling you? A woman can go to prison for helping a man silence her. I haven't said anything to anybody. I know that's not the same as it looking that way. So your advice is no. My advice as his attorney is absolutely not. A wedding in the middle of a homicide prosecution is a gift to the prosecution. If we go to trial, Whitaker stands up and tells 12 people the defendant married the only civilian witness against him 9 days before the baby came. And every one of those 12 draws the same conclusion, and they are right. And as a person, she looked at me a while. As a person, I'd tell you what a marriage actually does. Because nobody has, and everybody's been so busy telling you what it can't do. And this is the part I once said properly because it changed my life, and it is never in the movie. A marriage does not make you loved. It does not make him faithful or careful or free. It is not a feeling, and it is not a promise. A promise is what you say at the front of the room, and the marriage is the paper you sign at the side of it. What it is standing. It makes you next of kin. A hospital has to tell you. A prison has to tell you. If that man dies in custody at 3 a.m, somebody in a uniform picks up a telephone and calls you by law instead of you hearing it from a cousin. It means inheritance without a will. It means you can make a medical decision. It means that when an institution decides who is family and who is not, you are not standing at a desk explaining yourself. And the baby in New York, a child born to a married woman, is presumed to be her husband's child, Ruiz Yang said. Automatically. His name goes on the certificate without a fight and without a form. And if we don't marry, then you both sign an acknowledgement of paternity. It can be done from inside. It's a piece of paper. It's free. And it gets you the same name on the same certificate. She held my eyes. I want you to have that, Naima. Because if you do this, I need it to be true that you didn't have to. He called at 8:40 that night. The recording. The gap. His name in his own voice. The beep. Naima, don't. What? I know what you're about to ask me, and I know why. And if the first words out of your mouth on a recorded line are about that courtroom, I am hanging up this phone. 11 seconds. $9. Okay, he said. Ask me again. And that man, who had never in his life said one unnecessary word, who said, stay in the car, instead of, I love you, who fixed a lock in 9 minutes, and never mentioned it took a breath in a hallway on Rikers Island with somebody else's argument going on behind him, and said it badly. I don't want her to come here, and there be a line on the paper with nothing in it. I put my hand over my mouth. That's the reason. Say the other part, I said. Say what it doesn't do. I need to hear you say it because I'm going to be asked one day and I am not going to lie for you. He was quiet long enough that the recording warned us about the monitoring again. It don't help me, he said. Deborah told me. It don't help me one bit. Then yes. Naima, I'm not saying yes to save you. You can't be saved by me, and I've stopped trying. My voice was doing something I couldn't control. I'm saying yes because I sat on a bench on Skirmerhorn Street and couldn't finish a sentence about who you are to me. Because there's a form in my bag with a blank space on it. Because in November, I wrote my mother's name on a college packet under emergency contact and cried in a library basement about it. And I have never told you that, and I'm telling you now. Okay, and Malachi. Yeah. Don't you ever tell anybody it was for the other reason. Not a friend, not your people, not one time. Because I am going to be standing in that courtroom in a month, and I am going to tell the truth in it.